Going with the smaller people. They ask a question. Should we take a moment? Do we need all this extra space?
Well, are we expecting more board members?
Are we expecting any more board members?
Not
We can spread out a little bit.
Okay. Okay, is everybody about ready?
Commissioner, as soon as you can see yourself up there.
Isn't that?
I wish.
I'm warning people about the watch.
Lots of spray is not, is confiscated.
It's got a ledge back there.
Oh, okay, thank you. Vote for wasps.
You feel cold lost.
Any of you all allergic?
I can fill in.
Is anyone allergic? Is anyone allergic to?
I've got great good at jumping up and knocking them down.
Is anyone allergic to bees? Wasps, bee stings, anyone? Okay, just want to let you know, we do have a little bit, I mean, I'm being serious, we have a wasp problem, and so.
Well, we have a team of Belton and myself ready to go into action.
Chemical warfare.
You know what, Mark, he comes in for the last final shot, and
That's
he's
right.
part of the
It takes
team.
credit, I know.
So we do have another board member.
I'm there, Jennifer. Okay. And if anyone else comes in, you can just listen to this. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to have with us this afternoon for our joint meeting, members of the Board of Education. We will be discussing the school allocation cycle for July 2014. And before we begin, of course, I'd like to introduce our County Administrator, Mr. Mark Belton, and we have our Superintendent of Schools, Ms. Kim Hill. And of course, I'm always so thrilled to have with us Board of Education Chair, Ms. Roberta Wise. And so I think we all know everyone, but just for the sake of our viewers at home, to my right is Commissioner Ken Robinson, and to my left is the Vice Chair, Commissioner Ruben Collins, and to his left, Commissioner Bobby Brucci. I'm Commissioner Candace Kelly, and Commissioner Deborah Davis is participating in a Maryland Bar Association function this afternoon, and therefore could not be with us. And so, Ms. Wise, if you'd like to begin by introducing your board members.
Absolutely. To my right is Vice Chair Maura Cook, and on her right is Mrs. Peter Tan Peterson, and to my left is Jen Bray.
Great to be here. Now, normally, this process, I believe, begins with Mr. Groff explaining the school allocation process. And again, this is for the July 2014 cycle. So, Mr. Groff, if you'd like to begin.
Thank you, Commissioner. As Commissioner Kelly said, we're here for the school allocation cycle. This is the second half, since we do in 6-month increments. This is the second half of 2014. These allocations are granted under available capacity in each of the schools under state-rated capacity measurements. We are going to go through a brief history of what's happened in the last 6 months based on the last allocation cycle, and then we're going to go forward with explaining the allocations that are currently available. And should the board feel comfortable with these numbers, we'll be requesting approval, and then staff will then, after the meeting, go through with our normal administrative procedure, which is actually offering the allocations to projects that are on the waiting list. Mr. Mutton?
Thank you very much. Hopefully everybody has your packet and attachment. The first thing we're going to talk about is a quick review of this past January 2014 June 2014 cycle, which this joint group completed back in April. During that time frame, a total of 32 allocations were offered to projects on the waiting list, of which a total of 17 allocations were accepted amongst 3 projects. One of those was a 13 lot allocation to an apartment project. The other 2 were 2 lot allocations to 2 lot minor subdivision plats. So again, during this past 6-month period, a total of 17 new allocations were granted to 3 separate projects. Also during that time frame, we applied a total of 5 bulk allocations to minor subdivision plats and building permits based on lots of record. So again, a very small number indicative of the activity during this past 6-month period. That then takes us to this current cycle. The first part of it is the attachment B in your packet, and that's known as the capacity enrollment comparison for school year 2013-2014. It is the table that has the red ink, which basically shows shortages for any of the affected schools where there is no capacity beyond state rated. This chart is produced in concert with the Board of Education staff, and again, it's based on the September 30th, 2013 enrollments at that time. We'll also note that the high school enrollments are based on the realization of the St. Charles High School, as well as high school enrollments or projections given to us by Board of Ed staff previously for this school year. So what that leaves you then is everything is based on state-rated capacity. You then subtract current enrollments, which leaves column C, which is your excess or shortage in terms of student capacity. You then convert that to a dwelling unit, which is basically dividing that number by the yield rate per type of school level. So let's look, for example, at the top of the list. Paul Barnhart has a total excess of 11 seats, and that equates to 51.6 lots or units when you divide it by the yield rate. We then take that dwelling unit total availability and then divide it by 5, which is again the standard practice we use, which is to basically show the absorption over the years, that it usually takes that long to realize students from an affected project. That leaves then a total of 10 lots able to allocate to the Paul Barnhart School. So again, it's a continued reduction down to a very finite number, which again is very specific and standard to the current policy and procedure that the county has adopted. So again, this table is the basis under which we determine how much capacity is available to allocate, again, based on current policy and procedure. That requires that a project must have capacity at all 3 school levels, and that capacity is only granted or offered at the smallest rate available. So if the elementary school only has 10 seats to offer and is the limiting factor, then 10 is what they would be offered. The next is attachment C, and that is basically your elementary school attendance zones. It's taking the total dwelling units from column E on the last table. It's then splitting it in 2 to create the 2 6-month cycles. And then column C is really your operative column. That's where we divide by 75%, which then is your allocatable capacity for this cycle. The 25% is then allotted to the bulk allocation category, which we use in minor subdivisions. So this column C on your attachment C is really the key numbers that we're looking at in terms of what would be allocatable for this period. The last sheet also shows, again, your high school and middle school attendance zones, and again, column C is your operative and important consideration. That's where it reflects those actual seats available to allocate through this particular process. So that basically wraps up the contents of the report. Again, this has been done according to current policy and procedure as adopted by the County Commission in 2008 and amended in 2012. And as we noted earlier in the presentation, the last cycle, again, with a total offer of 32 allocations, of which only 17 were accepted. We predict at this point, should the county agree to adopt these numbers, that it will be a duplicate of the last 6-month offering.
So what happens to the 15 that aren't accepted?
They just,
They're not offered to someone
they're
else?
not reoffered. Again, the current policy doesn't allow that.
And then my other question is, since these seats that are being allocated are for those who have waited for them to become available,
Correct.
what is the typical amount of time that elders have waited? How long have they been on the list?
How long projects have been on the list for 12, 15 years probably?
That's the average waiting time?
That's probably the longest. Depends when the project was approved, but there are some projects that have been waiting for quite a long time.
Thank you.
Just a couple of added points. For clarity, like we said in the beginning, on the list, the attachment B list that has the school, showing the schools in red that currently don't have capacity in the state rated measurement, those schools will not be allocated to under this policy. It's only the schools that actually have capacity under the state rated measurement who would actually be offered capacity. Another note is under, you'll note under the new high school, St. Charles High School, the capacity being allocated is 1294, which is the capacity of the 3 grades that are currently in St. Charles. Once the new high school, or once the 12th grade is online in the new high school next school year, then the full capacity of 1,600 under the state rated measurement would be available capacity compared to the enrollment. So you can see there's a reduced enrollment. We're not allocating capacity of the 12th grade, and so therefore it's commensurate with where we are today.
Thank you, Mr. Groff. Ms. Wise, is there anything, Chairwoman Wise, I should say, anything you'd like to add or questions, anything from the board?
Any board member want to comment?
I don't think it really makes a difference.
Once you have something on your
Yeah.
mind.
Let's just try to keep, we're on TV, so we want to make sure that we have, run an efficient meeting. Ms. Wise?
Any comment?
I guess my question would be, after sitting on the APFO committee and offering options and possibilities as of February, I was looking to find out when those options and ideas would be considered, because we're going on old policy right now.
Correct. This is the, those recommendations will be discussed on the 23rd, which will be next week. And you certainly make a very good point, Ms. Peterson, that we're sort of putting the cart before the horse here, which we've done, also in terms of our DRA process.
The other question has to do with our timing. We seem to have been off cycle a bit for the last few times, and I was wondering if there's an opportunity in the near future to get us back on course.
Mr. Rob, can you speak to
Sure,
that, please?
I can address that. Unfortunately, our 2 boards have varying summer schedules, and thus why we're in September here. What I would propose to do is that we schedule both meetings. When we go to schedule the January meeting, we'll lock in the dates for both the January, and in this case, we'll do a June meeting as the second half. Because as both boards get closer to graduation, obviously there's a lot of commitments at that time, and then that pushes us into summer and so on and so forth. So what we'll do to rectify that situation is we'll schedule both meetings. I'll work with the clerk to make sure we have that scheduled well in advance of that time.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Wise, is there anything you would like to offer from staff in support or opposition to this recommendation?
Well, I just asked that everything. I didn't know whether Dr. Hill wanted to say anything or
Nope, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
not.
Ladies and gentlemen, I do need to query our board. We are missing a board member, and so is the board prepared to vote on this recommendation today? Or would you, I know there have been some interest in postponing it until next week when Commissioner Davis will be present. We have a briefing next week on the school allocation.
I would just wait till here. Like I said, we're asking for the horse right now.
Okay, Commissioner Collins, would you agree? And Commissioner Robinson? Okay, so we're going to forego voting on this today. Certainly would encourage you to join us next week, and we'll make sure we get that information to you from our clerk so that you're aware of the time and the date. One thing, just in follow-up to Ms. Peterson's comment, that I would really feel strongly that the commissioners consider, and that is curtailing approval of any DRRAs or school allocations now until we have an opportunity to fully understand the consultant's report, as well as a complete review and action taken with regard to the comments and feedback from the school allocation and adequate public facility ordinance task force. As Mr. Mudd pointed out, we're working from an adequate public facilities ordinance that dated back to 2008, was changed for the better, one would say, in 2012, but yet we're not feeling the benefits of that because of the way we're doing business still. And so I certainly would not want, we would need a briefing on that, but I think it would make sense. We've never done that, and I think we're certainly, or the new board should be at a point where something at some point has to stop until these things are addressed. Commissioner Robinson?
Just a question about what did we do, refresh my memory, in 2012 to amend the process?
We went to state rated capacity.
So that was 2012, I thought that was earlier.
It took us that long to get that far. And so, as I said, we appointed the task force in 2012, didn't populate it until the spring of 2013, finally finished our work, February of 2014, and here we sit. We just approved a flurry of DRAs just a couple of weeks ago, and now this. And so, it seems that at some point we have to have the fortitude to either put our, as they say, nose to the grindstone and complete the work on the recommendations of the task force, or stop doing what we're doing. So I'm appreciating your feedback on that.
You said it very well.
I do too. That's exactly. I was going to say it when she said curtail the RAs. I was going to say, didn't we just do this the other day?
We did.
My concern is that as soon as we build a building, we try to fill it up real fast, and that puts us back in the same situation we were before. That's the only concern I have at this point. That'll be the last time I get to say that, since I'm not going to be back here anymore. So that is a big concern that I have. It's almost like we're trying to fill it up so we can start another building.
Well, I believe that St. Charles already opened above our projections.
Mr. Buck, is that a
So,
question?
The projection is the projection difference, I think, was about 20 or 21 students higher.
978, 978 as of yesterday. And
The
we-
number in your projection, I think, was in the 950s. So.
That's a full classroom.
We just approved 3 additional teachers to be hired to staff St. Charles an hour ago.
And again, that goes back to what the task force, what we dealt with, which is there's much more to this than bricks and mortar. When you have to bring in additional staff at this level, this is all part of our operating costs, and we're in this together, and we just can't continue like this. Or we do this together, so. Okay, so then we will postpone any action on this recommendation. Thank you for the recommendation, Mr. Mudd, for an excellent report. And Mr. Belton, I would ask that next week, when you place this on the agenda, you get it as close as possible to the work on the task force.
Vote
Yes,
after the task force?
yes, please, thank you. And so that would move us into, we're a little early here. Do you want, let's take a little time. We're so happy to have you here with us today. Is there anything you would like to discuss? I know you mentioned, Ms. Wise, that this will be your last joint meeting, and that would be the case for me as well, and Commissioner Collins. So, this is a great time for those of us who have been around a while to share some thoughts and recommendations for the future. And I'm not sure anybody, Ms. Peterson will be leading the board.
And Ms. Cook, yeah.
And Ms. Oh my goodness, so.
And Ms. Bowie, who's not here today, so.
Well, we'd be delighted to hear, from your perspective, some of your wisdom on things that you think the next board can do better.
Are we on camera?
Yes, we are. Oh, you're always such a lady. Come on.
No, I just think that we need to work more closely together on budget. That's a big concern for me, and I see it continuing in the future.
Any specific areas that you're most concerned about, or thoughts on what we might do earlier on in the process? It's a lot to understand budgets of these magnitudes.
Well, obviously, the first thing on my mind is that we've got to do something for our educators. We've got to do something. They're sitting there without a COLA and a couple steps, and it's gonna put us eventually in a very bad position, because there are other counties giving the steps and the COLA, and we're gonna lose those people.
You already are losing people. It's already started.
How many teachers would you say that you're losing to other counties?
I don't have any firm numbers for you, but I can tell you anecdotally that we will interview very strong candidates straight out of school, and they have choices, especially those in special needs areas, whether it be science or math or special education. We had a huge challenge this school year hiring world language teachers and media specialists. And so those folks coming out of school or coming into this area looking for a position, they'll compare our salary with the salaries of those around us, and the strongest folks sometimes are going. And again, I don't have numbers for you, but I can tell you that it's happening. And our folks this coming school year will be 3 steps behind. And it's difficult to, in my position, to value teachers and to tell them over and over again, you are so important to our kids. You are what makes the difference in this school district. You know, we wear these bracelets, be the difference, and that's what we encourage our staff members to do. Yet we can't keep pace with surrounding counties, and that's really causing a problem for us.
Commissioners, any questions about that?
We need to find a funding source where it just goes to the steps. I mean, we were told this year we didn't have any money, and we had to go by what our fiscal department told us. I don't think nobody here doesn't want to get a step for a raise, but we gotta find where the money's coming from. We gotta have that money, and it's gotta be set and can't be touched for that every year to catch you all up.
And-
But when we're told we don't have anything, we're gonna be upside down, what would y'all do in your department? I mean, how would you, your fiscal department tell you? I mean, we're in the same boat. I don't think there's nobody here that doesn't want to give the steps or doesn't want to raise it, but we gotta find the money where it's gonna come from. I sure want to give it to you.
And that's where the task force comes in, Commissioner Rucci, and I think that's probably where a little bit of the frustration you might be seeing, is because a lot of people spent a lot of hours in this room, and they came up with recommendations that this board has as yet been unwilling to hear.
I am highly frustrated, and I will say that it had a huge effect on determining whether or not I would run for the board again, because I spent a lot of time in committee trying to make things better. And I will say that I felt that my work fell on deaf ears, because you all have not looked at it yet. And if you really are serious about asking members of the community to be on a committee, I would hope in the future that you would jump to, when a committee completes its work, and look at it.
It all boils down to money, correct?
It would be putting into action plans that would provide funding.
And I agree with that. I agree
Well
with
then,
that.
why, sir? I'm just asking why you didn't look at the APF committee's work.
It was a little bit after we did our budget.
No, it was
It
before.
was in February,
February.
sir.
Yeah, but still doesn't tell where our money's coming from.
It did. They had many, many different models and recommendations.
I know, but as of our funding this year, where was it gonna come from?
Well, it would have offered, we could have made some changes to our adequate public facilities ordinance immediately. We could have had those changes made by now. I think that's what, these folks are trying to say. They met for a year in this room. They came up with recommendations that would have made it possible for us to do exactly what we needed to do, but we wouldn't even hear them. We wouldn't allow it to be put on the agenda.
There's steps, where would that money come from?
Well, if you had, there were different models. Some of it could go toward operating, some of it will go into special funds. I mean, there were lots of different options.
Yeah, but I think for next year, we're gonna have it, or find it, because we.
Not if we don't get
I'm
moving,
saying we gotta
you
do
know?
something.
I mean, but I think from their point of view, we had this in February. We had it in time.
And I agree with what you're saying, but there was no money this year from our critical service to do any of this.
So this would be my charge to the next two boards. I think maybe better communication. That seems to be an issue. It's been around for at least 8 days. And we're hearing it right now. That would be the biggest, most important thing that we can do, because we have this fabulous superintendent who has extremely high standards that we have charged her with, and in order to fulfill that, we need the support of the commissioners and some indication that you believe in value education as much as we do. I can't say I feel that the board values education, or I will say, all of the board values education the way we do. Not all of it.
I don't want to limit anyone. Commissioner Collins, anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, certainly, I've been here 8 years now, and education funding has been a priority, but it's been a challenge at the same time. And I would imagine future boards will make the continued commitment to education that Charles County has through the years. I mean, funding, particularly for Sept, was a challenge that wasn't limited to teachers as well. I mean, this was an issue that impacted government across the board. Charles County employees have not seen any type of increase in salary for several years now. So it is a legitimate issue, there's no doubt about that. And I think as a board and as we continue to proceed, there will be more of a focus on finding revenue sources to create more of an environment where our salaries can become more competitive, and where we're not put in a position where on an annual basis we have to make these very difficult decisions when we're looking at continuing our overall services with providing adequate salaries for all of our employees, including teachers, including county employees, including sheriff's officers. So I have no doubt that the future board will make that a priority. And I think as we see more of an increase in our revenue, particularly from the commercial side of things, I think we'll be provided more avenues to accommodate all of our workers.
Commissioner Robinson?
Well, I have been a supporter, and I will continue to be a supporter if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to represent the citizens of Charles County for the next 4 years. And I think that with the report that the committee did, we will have a roadmap to make finding the sources for adequate compensation, as well as the kind of education system that Dr. Hill advocates so brilliantly, will be a lot easier to take to fruition.
And so just to go back to the previous discussion on the, we are
I
having a
thought you
problem
could get up there.
with, ladies and gentlemen, we just have a problem with, we think we have a hive in here somewhere. This might, Lord,
Close your eyes.
You're going to take your shoe off.
Why am I guessing this is going to be on YouTube?
That's right. If you have any allergies to chemical pesticides, you should leave the room. Okay, I just want to say, before we'll end this segment, I think Commissioner Rucci's point about having a reserve fund, that is something that the task force.
It needs to be a fund we can't touch.
Exactly.
It goes to that every year.
And in that report, you're going to find that, and so that's going to be good news. Ms. Abel, we haven't heard from you yet. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to say I look forward to working with the next Board of Commissioners collaboratively to come up with solutions for our funding issues.
Great, thank you. And I know we all of us, and we look around this room, we see amazing staff. Appreciate all of your efforts. This is a tough issue, but I think we have some good tools now in the toolbox as a result of the task force efforts, and so we're looking forward to seeing you guys implement.
I think there could have been more funding this year. We got stuck with things left from 2 boards back that we were obligated to do. That took a lot out of the county's budget that we had to abate by, I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah, that was very sad.
Yeah, it was.
Very sad.
But nothing we could do about it. The law is the law. I mean, there's nothing we could, it goes back years and years, And that's what happens in this.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess that will conclude our 2:30 session. We begin at 3:15 p.m. with our briefing. Maybe just go ahead and start. Do you think that would be a problem? If everybody's ready, since we have a little bit of a wasp infestation anyway. And we could put, let's see, where the GWWO folks can just go right here, if you wouldn't mind.